Right, Steve, on to the Eurobox. This was a much simpler one for us. We didn't really want to change too much. I think with the BrickBox, there may have been a bit of self-reflection that we missed out some real quality. In the Eurobox, actually, it has performed rather well. So what we're really doing in this occasion is just improving the quality, really. And we've got two changes that we want to make. So it'll be Pernod Ricard that's coming out, and because of the recent falls, LVMH is finally making its debut in the Eurobox. We're getting this obviously at a much better valuation than we would have got if we would have bought it at the beginning. So yes, that will be going in. And the second change we're going to make is we're going to take out Novo Nordisk and we're going to bring in Prismian. Prismian is the undersea cable layer that we discussed last year. They're actually on the Italian exchange, but we don't have access to that where the Eurobox is held. So we'll be buying the OTC version like we have done with Svenska Handelsbanken and I think another one that off the top of my head I can't remember. Yes, so I think that's basically swapping out Novo, which is having a terrible year and has its main competing product hasn't passed the kind of benchmarks that they expected for a company sort of on the cusp of megatrends. And we're kind of swapping out a company that's suffering because its alcohol sales are pretty bad for a company that's kind of also suffering because its alcohol sales aren't particularly good, but it's also kind of feels like it's kind of slightly out of cycle, perhaps. Maybe having a little sort of consolidation and some change and investment into itself before it starts growing again, Steve. So they're the only two changes we're going to make. Do you want to offer any colour on them?
So when we look at the change from quote unquote my side, which was Pernod out and LVMH in, we've of course sold or are planning to sell. We'll put these through on Monday, so the day after these videos are released. This is very much clearing the way on the alcohol side of things, but we are replacing it with LVMH, which has a non-trivial alcohol arm of its own. It's an interesting sort of portfolio here. I mean, a lot of their stuff goes through a joint venture with Diageo, so it's basically a kind of entity that's part owned by LVMH, part owned by Diageo, and LVMH supplies the basically brands and stuff, and Diageo distributes them, and that's quite a nice position to be in. But if you think about what's going on in the sort of the alcohol market, there's two kind of main trends going on. One is away from beer and wine and towards spirits. And LVMH is not terribly positioned there. It doesn't have much going on in the beer section. But it's got Hennessy, which is fairly well on the spirit side. Wines, it's kind of heavy on. But the other big trend that's going on is a shift towards premium everything. So in the beers division, Constellation Brands, which is the second largest wine importer in the States and has a big beer portfolio, it's about 85% of their revenues, I think, from memory. They are seeing quite a large shift towards the premium end of their beers division. So there is still growth in the beers market, but not in your kind of lower priced offerings, I guess. What you're seeing there is a much stronger, or what they think they're seeing, because otherwise this stock is in trouble, is a big shift towards premium everything rather than away from beers and wines to spirits. And you are seeing that certainly partly, but in terms of premium stuff, LVMH is a place to be here. It's interesting that it's kind of historically been there when you listen to various analysts talking about this less volatile part of their business, their more steady growing ish stuff. I think the outlook over the next few years for LVMH could be very interesting when we sort of move into succession and transition and so on, and we can say a bit more about that. As you rightly point out, Steve, we are getting that. Having ignored it partly for valuation 6 months ago, we're now getting it a lot cheaper. We're getting it about 10% more expensive than we would have got it a week ago when we kind of first suggested this idea. But such is the nature of these timing things that we'll take where we were on this one. Novo's a trickier proposition, I think. It kind of hard always with these pharmaceutical things, despite what I'm going to say in a moment about a different pharma company. But you were mostly behind this one, and as I understand it, your kind of sit down reasoning was along the lines of, look, insulin alone doesn't get you here on this, and the GLP-1 market is there's not huge numbers of competitors, at least not yet, but what there is a very, very tough competitor. And from what we can see of it right now, Novo are currently busy rowing with hims and hers, which I view as a noble enterprise on Novo's part, but it doesn't mean I want to go and own the stock here particularly. So interested in that thought. But yeah, I think both of these look like reasonably straightforward moves.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. So, just quickly on Prismian, because I know we've never really covered it in any depth, other than to say that I think I mentioned it a couple of times beforehand. But it's a global leader in cable systems. It produces primarily and lays underground submarine cables for distribution and transmission of electricity, specialized cables for industrial context, so low voltage cables for construction and infrastructure. It also does telecoms cables, so copper, optical fiber for transmission of data, video, and sound around the world. It does design and manufacture and fit and post installation maintenance of all of these systems as well. It spends a hell of a lot on R&D, so it's products that they have at the moment are absolutely cutting edge. They have this thing called Bend Bright, which is the narrowest bending sensitive optical fiber flex ribbon, which is it's basically a cable with the most fiber in it. So it's an optical cable essentially with the highest number of fibers in the sector. Yeah, their products are really, really good. They're all around the world. They've got, I think it's 50 or something manufacturing sites all over the world off the top of my head, and that includes in America as well. So they can navigate the tariffs pretty well. They acquired a company in America called General Cable, who were probably one of the biggest in America. Creating, they were a little bit worried actually because basically gave a lot of concentration over there. So it actually got Competition and Markets Authority had to sign it off. But yeah, 31,000 employees, if that gives you an idea of the kind of size it is. It's a big company, and yeah, I think it's a really, really important one. It's the global leader in connecting up offshore wind as well. So this is pretty much the one you turn to when you need to get your stuff from somewhere to somewhere else via the sea, Steve.
Yep, and it's nice to find these kind of companies that have kind of big positions. It's not something you necessarily associate with Europe, I guess, with the way when you think about kind of Eurobox. I suppose luxury is something that Europe does do better across the board than, say, the States, for instance. So we've talked about LVMH, but there's also things like Kering and Hermes and so on that are also very worthy candidates in terms of being big, important luxury things. The US, mostly because of partly a different culture and partly a different kind of history, doesn't really have that same kind of clout. But when you think about engineering, I'm not necessarily sure in undersea cable laying, it's not necessarily something that jumps out to me as being distinctively a European specialism. So really interesting to
Or
find this one
Italian.
here or Italian for that matter. No. I wonder, yeah, when I think about Italy, I think about, well, food and Ferraris. And we do have Ferrari in the Eurobox, at least for the time being. I'm reasonably happy with that there. So I guess we will see how these go. But the Eurobox has, without question, made a stronger start than the BritBox. I suppose my wonder for the rest of the year, Steve, do you see this continuing? Because I do. I'll tell you in advance.
I think we'll see. I think we packed the Eurobox with quite a lot of sort of quality and momentum, whereas we were a bit more cautious about value with the BritBox. And I think they're relatively close to each other, Steve. I think there's plenty of time for this to change. I think, as I usually say at the end of my portfolio, I think there's everything to play for at the moment.
Fair enough. Everything to play for it is. My sense is that the sort of European stimulus is probably going to help a little bit in at least the short term, but we'll see what happens. I'm also fascinated by the way that there used to be a company called General Cable. I was looking at all these there's loads of General various things or United various things in the States, and we've probably heard of a lot of them like General Dynamics and General Electric and so on. There was one called General Foods back in the day that kind of the bunch of brands that are now within Kraft Heinz sort of passed through along the way, and they made their way over to in various sort of transactions and acquisitions and so on. But General Cable is, I think, probably my favourite of them so far. You've been watching a segment from the Playing FTSE show, brought to you in association with our favourite broker, Trading 212. For the full version of the show, check us out on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you open a new account with Trading 212 using the link in the description, there's a free fractional share in it for you. Just make sure that you use the code FTSE when you sign up. Terms and conditions apply, and do remember that when investing, your capital is at risk.